Bush.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Heartland Mamas.
I'm Heidi Henry,
And I'm Murray Briel.
and today we're going to talk to you about the Federalist Society.
And what it means, coming to the Great Red Divide.
You know, on the edge of the Great Red Divide, we think that federal judges don't mean anything to us, but really it shapes everything we do, Murray.
It impacts everything.
Not just every person in the Great Red Divide, every person in the country, every person in the world is affected by the Federalist Society. And that is by design. What does the Federalist Society do, Murray?
Well, the Federalist Society is, there's this mystique about it, almost like it's an Illuminati type skull and bones.
Yeah, you know.
There's this mythology behind it. And actually what it is it's an extremely well organized networking system. So when it starts at the college level, it then goes into the law school level, it moves up to local levels, city levels.
It started out as innocuously as a debate team, a debate club in some of the more elite law schools like Yale and Harvard and Chicago.
John Marshall.
Yeah, John Marshall. So it started out then innocuously around 1980, and then it blossomed from there. It was just kind of it was like people about 5 years younger than me, maybe graduated from high school 80, 82-ish.
One of the big influences for the law students and professors in that time era was the influence of Reaganomics.
Oh, yeah.
The economic base for it became fundamental. They felt they weren't getting the education or application of those real-world consequences, so they started their own
and at that point
organization
in time,
that held to those beliefs.
Having lived through the Ronald Reagan presidency, having come of age right at that time.
I remember that.
Yeah. And for those of us that weren't a champion of Reaganomics and had to live with the consequences immediately after, and still live with them today, people who didn't feel that they were impacted by it were people who were wealthier, who were part of the upper echelon, that were upper middle class or better, and didn't feel like they were getting a fair shake. For some reason, these wealthy people were feeling oppressed, apparently. So
there are still plenty of people like that feeling oppressed right now.
But it's about 98% of the country now.
No, I'm talking about the 1% is still feeling oppressed.
I know.
Right now.
Every piece of the pie they want. They don't want you to even have a sliver, and they want you to fight over that sliver. They divide us by color, by gender, by race, by religion, by anything that they can do. So they keep dividing us over this one little sliver of pie and causing us to fight over it. Then they win every single time.
And so, as you said, it did start off fairly innocuous.
Right.
But the writings of several of the justices prior to them starting helped push that idea. So did
Absolutely.
The Reaganomics.
Yeah.
So they felt that, and the best part was they crafted this logo, this mantra, this overreaching discussion of being, the Constitution should be interpreted as it is.
Yes.
No
living document.
Making no advancements or movements for anything going forward.
Because conservatives can serve only the past.
Well, what I think is funny is if you go way, way back to when the Articles of Confederation and we did the Constitution and the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists.
Right.
We're still going through
Eighth grade.
So
you should know this from 8th grade. Go ahead.
So we're kind of in that situation again. I know it seems not parallel, but they are. Yeah. So we had to realize that the Articles of Confederation was not, and we actually broke the rules. We broke the Articles of Confederation to do the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. Yeah. Right. But, so to say that you're founded on that and based on that and you should have that this is, it's like, no, we had something before anyway. So their argument doesn't hold.
But
their message is great. Their message is wonderful. It's on target. It's perfect spin. I have it. Oh my goodness, their message is just...
The messaging is great, and I have to say
It's
that
outstanding.
How they message things, how they package it, even being called the Federalist Society. Ooh, that sounds really important, doesn't it?
Oh, totally.
And so Murray's going to tell you exactly what their message points are, but the thing that the Federalist Society does is it compiles lists of people that they would like to see as judges. They especially love young conservatives, very young. So we're talking that they want to put them in place as judges for 20 to 45 years is the goal. And that's why we're getting younger people on the Supreme Court that are ultra-conservative, that have just a few goals in mind. But the Constitution to them is not a living document. It's supposed to be interpreted exactly verbatim. But the problem is with that, no one could have seen, our founding fathers couldn't have seen what we have become. I don't think that they had as big a vision as they had.
See, I don't think the founding fathers ever intended it to be a be-all and end-all. And that's what I was saying,
Right.
is back in the beginning, they knew that the Articles of Confederation were not a be-all and end-all.
Right, exactly.
But it was what they had and what they did, what they could. So by breaking those was huge for them.
Right.
And then founding a new one, that they knew that what they put in place was not going to last forever. They did it themselves. So
Right.
to say that they adhered strictly to the is not true.
That's why our Constitution is made to be amended.
Yes,
Why we
it
have
was
a-
designed to still keep, the rich white
Right.
man in power, but nonetheless, it was designed to help increase that power as
Well,
they went along.
Well,
You
it was
know,
designed to be a
facts.
living document. That is why we have constitutional amendments. It's very difficult to put a constitutional amendment in, and it's supposed to be difficult, but it is a living document that is supposed to be added to.
So that's just part of the frustration from when you think logically about why their argument doesn't hold water. But for many, many people it does. It is quite. And as you said about the network, it's a list. It's not technically a written out list somewhere that passes and is
Are you
under
sure?
vault and key. I believe that list is somewhat fluid. So there's probably a digital vault somewhere that the list goes back and forth. But again, it's all from the network. So if I'm a conservative law student and I join this organization and I adhere to their principles and their rules, this gives me a huge leg up in networking, in going into corporate law, into all these areas. Then they helped me get there. So guess what? They have me
Right.
as that, my independence goes away.
And these are, by and large, male. They're almost entirely white.
No, Heidi.
There are no people of color.
You stop.
Yeah, and very few women.
You are telling me
I'm telling you the truth.
that an organization that seeks to control everything for their own benefit is made up of mostly white men?
Absolutely.
Well, I'm dumbfounded right now. I don't think I can continue. That is so shocking.
I want to say that, and see, the
terrifying.
Federalist Society helping us choose judges, which is exactly what they're doing, started under W. W was really the first one to utilize the Federalist Society.
Actually, almost every judicial placement for him, for his administration, came from the Federalist Society.
Or ones that they approved. And our president, who's not a smart man, in fact, W was considered to be the dumbest president we'd had until we had this one. Instead of doing the research and thinking it through and working with a team of people, he has decided that Leonard Leo, who is the executive vice president of the Federalist Society, should be the guy to compile the list of all the judges. So he's given him, instead of taking the power as president to help develop this list, instead he's conveyed it over to one guy, one society, one group.
Because he's out of his depth when it comes to that.
Well,
he
he
chooses
Lazy.
buddies. He chooses lackeys. He chooses
chooses-
friends who would be extremely loyal. And he
Right.
doesn't have that network in that area.
No.
He doesn't have that depth.
He would probably appoint his children if he could.
Right, but
even though they're not able to really fully comprehend what the rule of law, and that's why they're in trouble all the time. But yeah, because he tends to have a lot of nepotism in everything he does. He keeps his friends and family close and controls them, and they're loyal to him.
So
but
he
in this
relinquishes his control here.
Well, this is where he relinquished his control, but he realized that the dog whistle of the Federalist Society is huge in getting him elected and then reelected, and manipulating things like voter suppression to help keep him in power. Because it's not that he was elected by an overwhelming majority, he wasn't, but he was elected by the Electoral College.
There's some discussion about, okay, it's not really a conspiracy. That gets such a bad terminology.
I hate that, yeah.
But actually, if you think about the definition of conspiracy, it actually means a really well orchestrated plan. You know, so you kind of, you know,
and you can't really give Trump
No, and I'm not saying him. But what happened is those involved in the Federalist Society and the Republican Party and that conservative push has been working on this for 30, 40 years.
Right.
The Federalist Society helped amplify that, and then now they are in a position where you mentioned voter suppression.
Yeah.
And when I think of Federalist, I mean, it comes to mind federal judges Roe v. Wade, like, because that's an important issue to me. So it just Roe v. Wade. Mm-hmm. But it affects us on every level. It affects the utilities. It affects local municipalities who are starting their own broadband and they may not be able to. It affects unions. It affects the water and land usage.
It affects media, both print, visual, and so TV, radio, everything is affected by this and the regulation. And the thing is that Debbie started this, but we know that George W. Bush wasn't
never really the brains
running.
Behind the
it was Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
So, and
I'm sorry, I just have to tell you, we used to call him, he's a murderous cyborg.
Oh,
that was what we had our nickname, my husband and I, for Dick Cheney.
Tricky Dicky is what we call him.
Yeah, no, murderous cyborg.
So, but he was a horrible person, and he is a horrible person still.
I know, so shocking.
And I wish I could read the textbooks 100, 200 years from now to read what they write about him. You know, don't you want to know?
No, because history is written by the winner, and right now, who's writing history?
Oh my gosh.
Who is going to be writing history? It's going to be another 30 or 40 years before we have, or even 20 years. Like when my Henry's age and Gerald's age are in those jobs, they'll probably start looking at it from a more objective perspective. But
well, and the thing is that, Trump conveying this huge responsibility to not just the Federalist Society as a 501c3 is supposed to not be involved in politics. So they actually, I know.
It's crazy that they gave $24 million to Women's Voice to help defend Kavanaugh.
Okay, yeah. And
but
how many
that's
women were involved
just
in Women's Voice?
Non-profit.
Yeah. How many women were involved in Women's Voice? Yeah, not any. So I couldn't find one in all my research. And where they do have the Federal Society has some corporate sponsors. Facebook is one of them. I've got a little list here. Time Warner, Chevron Chemical, Google, Verizon. Then it goes into the super, super, super dark money called Donors Trust. And the thing with Donors Trust, which is where this money comes in, because, Brett Kavanaugh, all his millions of dollars of debt were mysteriously paid off, and nobody seems to know how. And this comes from this. Nobody knows who donates to Donors Trust because it's under layers and layers and layers, like an onion, like the Shrek of donating. So, and Donors Trust has this money that it parses out to buy politicians and to buy votes and to, $23 million for Brett Kavanaugh, $18 million for Neil Gorsuch. when you invest that kind of money into a judge, don't you think somebody's expecting some return for that investment?
They are, but they don't need to worry that they're going to get that return because it's already been decided based on this society, based on this network of colleges and law students and law clerks and the connections. You know who represents those ideologies. You know who you've already helped. You've helped get into law school. You've helped push.
Yes.
It's a system of owing all the way down the line.
And they'll clerk for Clarence Thomas or Alito or Gorsuch or Kavanaugh.
And you're already on track.
You're on
that's
track.
Gonna
You are on the fast track to get in. So when we talk about them being a 501c3 and not allowed to be in politics, instead of doing that, they go with the Judicial Crisis Watch, which is a 501c4, and they are allowed to participate in politics. And guess who's in charge of the Judicial Crisis Watch?
Could it be Leonard Leo?
Oh, it is.
Oh my gosh, I win. Where's the cowbell? Ding, 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 ding. I win.
So, the thing is...
Okay, so this guy is the one that we were, when we started talking, we mentioned that, Trump had given over all of the judicial questions to, this person. This is the guy. And this guy, is the guy right here.
Yeah.
Leo. Last name Leo.
And even though he was...
No relation to DiCaprio.
Yeah. Even though he was a big part of the Federalist Society, the JCN, the Judicial Crisis Watch, he stepped away from one board to work on another to formulate 25 names that could be given to Donald Trump to be put forward as Supreme Court justices.
As well as that, he founded 3 other nonprofit organizations.
He's so busy. How does he have time?
And that he didn't have to have any filings for 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
Because of the way that the IRS handles nonprofits.
And filings.
So all of this dark money was coming in. And, okay, so he has these nonprofits that he connects to help the issues. But, he keeps his advocacy work for the Federalist Society separate. Right. Absolutely separate from
just because they're in the same building.
Right.
And share computers.
Right. Absolutely, there's no connection.
Even though everything is all under own, the private servers are shared and whatnot.
You mentioned the money and how it comes in, and one of the things is BH Group, also known as BH Fund. So this is one of the entities that he founded. It's actually a for-profit consulting firm, but it donates, it makes nothing, it has no employees, it has no address, there's no existence of it anywhere.
Right.
So they don't even have a website.
Super shady.
And where does all of this money come from? Clearly, Leo made $120,000 in 2017 working for the Catholics.
For the Catholic Church in the United States, or for the Vatican, or who did
the Vatican, for working for a lobbying organization.
So in addition to all these nonprofits that he funds, that he founds and serves on the board of, and that he's in charge of, he also is doing work for the Vatican?
Yes, he's a very devout Catholic, very high up in the Bishop Love Fest.
Really?
Party. Yeah.
I didn't know that. So
more of the money, okay, so we know the big bad names, right?
Right.
The Koch brothers, you mentioned them.
Oh, yes, and the Bradleys.
And the Mercers. But there's a fella out there that we don't really hear very much about.
Is it George Soros?
Oh,
no.
Yes. Hey, no. George, if you're listening. I didn't get my check. Can you send it? I could really use the cash.
Not George Soros.
Speaking of checks, if y'all like what we do, I'm just saying, we'll have a button soon.
Yeah.
Help us.
So the thing is that with the liberals don't have a real, like a one person to go to like Leo Leonard or Leonard Leo. He tries to blame George Soros all the time. But George
Absolutely,
Soros really,
of course he does.
except for being very upset after the 2000 debacle, where Florida did some purging of votes and hanging chads and so on. George Soros started an organization to help with judicial crises, and that was it the Alliance for Justice? Alliance for Justice, or was it? Justice at Stake. I'm sorry. So he started something to try to help clarify these issues, so we wouldn't have hanging chads anymore. So we would have honest, open, fair, free elections, which is the goal of the United States, is to do that. So the Justice at Stake operated for about 17 years, from 2000 to 2017. And in that time, Leonard Leo decided to vilify George Soros for just trying to keep our democracy whole and wholesome and honest. And, I think about Socrates writing about democracy and how poorly it can turn out, which is what we're living through right now with this dystopian era. And George Soros, on the other hand, and I don't really know a whole lot about him, but I do know that he started Justice at Stake, and he tried to pull it back so that we could have open, honest, fair elections and not have another debacle like we had in Florida,
right?
In 2000. And granted, that's 19 years ago, but we're coming up on the 2020 election, and we know that we had Russian interference, and we also know that Mitch McConnell, who receives a lot of donations from these different societies that we've mentioned today, and not George Soros, has been sitting on these bills to help stop foreign interference in our elections.
Not even to investigate foreign interference in our election.
Yeah, not even to look at it.
Yeah, so. No, not even to get it to be discussed.
So I think what we need to talk about here, Marie, is what can we do? Number one, you just need to be aware that this is going on, because for most of it, I'm not a TV watcher, I read a lot. So these kind of, and I'll read something and then it'll take me in a different direction. And I read a book that somebody had recommended called, it was by Pomona College professor Amanda Hollis-Brusky, Brusky, Brusky, and she wrote a book called Ideas with Consequences, and I read that when it came out, and it talked about this, and I thought, oh my gosh. And Murray, I always call it secret squirrel stuff. I don't know why, but
secret squirrel stuff, that's a really good description for it.
And I thought, there's a whole lot of secret squirrel stuff going on here, and I don't like conspiracy theories, but at the same time,
like I said, a conspiracy is just a really well thought out plan.
And this really is, because during 6 years of the Obama administration, including when one of the Supreme Court justices needed to be, when Scalia dropped dead, at the home of a donor.
Don't even conflicts there.
So no conflict of interest there. But when he dropped dead at that donor's house, and we needed to have somebody come in and fill that Supreme Court vacancy, of course they didn't allow it to come to the floor. They didn't allow a debate on it. They didn't allow a hearing on it. Any of the federal judges that came through in the 6 of the 8 years of the Obama presidency were forbidden.
And that's something that we need to hit on, and that's because we need to have the Senate. We need to have control of the Senate. It is so important. Is getting Trump out important? 100%. You betcha. But more important than that is we need control of the Senate. Because even if we have a Democratic president and a Democratic House,
if we don't have the Senate,
we can't get any justices through.
Even if we just have the 2 houses, we can still do a lot. And the thing with having the 2 houses is right now the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, is sitting on about 140 pieces of legislation, some really good and some really not that great, that the House has passed. But how our system is supposed to work is that the House passes measures and they go to the Senate. And the Senate takes them to the floor, they review them, they send them to committee, and they vote on them. And the Senate passes measures and sends them to the House. Now, so far, we have one of the most dysfunctional House and Senate relationships. It's as bad as when it was under Obama, because we've become so
Actually, it's
polarized.
worse.
I do
It's
think
worse
it's worse
than it was under Obama.
Yeah, at least
Because at least under Obama, there was this thin, fake veil of civility and
with John
this
Boehner, who I
hidden,
couldn't stand, but
right, but
yeah.
you know, now that's completely gone. There's
Do you
no
remember when he-
allusion to the amounts of. There's no allusion to the lengths
Right.
that they will go to stop any progress from happening.
Well, and the thing that bothers me when we talk about the Federalist Society is how this will impact us in the Great Red Divide. And I was telling Murray before we started that I did some research. We have two huge abusers of Great Lakes water right now, and that would be Nestle's and Foxconn, both in Wisconsin. And the thing is that the president of Nestle's has come out and said that no one should have the right to water. No one. He thinks that should be a corporate America structure. Okay? Well, here's the problem with that. The Great Lakes also touch Canada. So if these federal judges come into power, and Nestle is in the court system right now, in the lower court system, over their abuses of our fresh water supply. And the Great Lakes is one of the largest, if it was the largest freshwater supply on the earth, okay? So Foxconn is abusing it up in right just north of Milwaukee there, and then we have Nestle's. So Nestle would like to take it so that they can have control. Well, you have to understand that the Great Lakes Basin...
And Nestle owns Ice Mountain, which is the largest distributor of bottled water. And
Yeah.
it all comes from Lake Michigan.
That's why you get one of these and bottle your own from your kitchen
Or an
sink.
RO system, yep.
Yeah, so, but the problem with that is that we, at the edge of the Great Red Divide, are underwater right now because of all the flooding. But normally we would have temperate weather right now for growing. Our aquifers, which are our underground rivers, is something else that Nestle wants control of.
And they are depleted in so many areas.
Oh, I know.
That's an issue.
Well, that's why the out here where we live, like where I live, most of us are on wells, on our own well. And so in rural Illinois, in rural America. And but when you go in closer to Chicago, a lot of them are pulling water out. The municipalities are pumping water out of the Great Lakes in order to drink. Something that would help Flint, Michigan tremendously if they could just get this done. They need the money to build the infrastructure, but they have a fresh water source, non-polluted water source right there. That's a whole different issue. But there's no reason those people should be going 3-4 years without clean water. Sorry. Soapboxing. But what I was trying to say is that God forbid if we have all these Federalist Society judges in place.
Which there's already been, I believe, 220 appointed.
I know. And
when we think of judges, it's not just
before the end of the year.
Supreme Court.
Oh no!
It's
Appellate
all
courts.
of these levels that
Yes.
put these layers in place so that it gets turned down and every step along the way. So, that's really important to what they do.
And so where I was going with this is that when you get to the big fresh water sources, that impacts farming and the American Heartland and the Great Red Divide immeasurably. And we have to have regulation and cleanliness standards in our freshwater sources, be it underground in the aquifers, in the lakes, rivers,
Absolutely.
and streams. We can't give this over to Nestle and Foxconn or to anybody else who decides.
They can't.
They can't.
We can't corporatize it.
But you realize that is one of the issues that's making its way through right now. And it's going to depend on which judge it hits. Yeah.
To Nestle, I give lots of money to
Yeah.
the nonprofit that's not really a nonprofit.
Yeah, into the dark money that,
Right,
that helps
right.
go into the Federalist Society.
Secrets.
Do you know how hard it is to find out where all that dark money comes from? Do you know? I mean,
That's an issue for another top, but oh my goodness, do we need to talk about that?
Yeah.
We need to talk about also the connections between religious groups and their influence.
Well, Murray, there was once upon a time, we used to make fun of the one-issue voter. We used to just consider them to be a write-off, and that is people who are anti-abortion. You call them pro-birthers.
Pro-birth.
I call them women enslavers because it is about servitude. But you out there that are one-issue voters, I'm talking to you, because they don't really care. They're going to keep working this stuff up through the Supreme Court and maybe overturn Roe v. Wade because that's to get your vote. But it's everything else that they're doing in that name. So you have to understand that this has never been about abortion. Every time you put a bumper sticker on your car, a sign in your yard to protect the Supreme Court, to pray to end abortion, abortion kills a beating heart, all of these other things, find out who funded those signs. And I'm telling you, I traced most of them right back to the Koch brothers, which is part of the Federalist Society. And the reason that this is important is they don't really care about abortion. They want your vote. Because without your vote, they don't win these elections to be able to get their other agenda through.
Well, we'll then know how to get things through the legislature.
It's an anti-union.
I'm sorry, it's a pretty, you know what it almost seems like? It almost feels a bit like a pyramid scheme.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
Like, you know, or not a pyramid scheme, but, you know, the direct sales plans.
I've told you, Marie, I spent 20 years selling vitamins in an MLM. I paid off my farm with it. So don't ban out the MLM.
There's so many more implications, and we'd like to go into some more of the dark money stuff, but we've been on for a while, and you probably have to get out of the car by now. So
I do want to tie one thing together, though, with the one-issue voter, is that to get your one issue voted on for abortion, with that, they want to deregulate everything. They want to forbid health care. They want to reinstate eliminations for pre-existing conditions. They want to defund public education. They want to control fresh water sources. They want to control land use. There are so many things that go along with this that really have a greater impact than women's reproductive health. And we're going to do a whole show on why it's not about abortion, but about health care. And I'm going to segue into one more thing, Murray, because we put Adam Kinzinger on a timeout. We need to put my former opponent from the race last year, Sue Resin, on a timeout. This mama,
Sue Resin, gets a timeout.
Because she was on her Facebook page crying, literally crying about the RHA vote.
It was really bad.
It was so bad. Hokey. It was hokey. It was contrived. It was so fake. And the thing about that is if Sue Resin, and I'm talking to you, Sue, if you get to see this, it's never been about abortion. If she was really interested in ending abortion, there would be the Planned Parenthood would be back in our county health departments again, like they started out, to prevent unplanned and unwanted pregnancy, to give comprehensive sex education, to give family planning advice, to give people reproductive health care, not abortions, like a pap smear and cancer screening.
The whole Catholic thing, because you know how many of the rural hospitals? Do you know how many of the rural hospitals are controlled by the Catholic health system?
Oh my gosh!
So it's limiting every rural woman's right to or access to, not even just the stuff. Oh, that's a whole other topic, but we've got a lot of this. So Sue Resin,
you are on timeout for misleading the public on the truth about women's health care.
And you'll fake ass crying.
Yeah. And if you really wanted to stop abortion, Sue, you would put a health care clinic, a funded women's health care clinic on every single corner. Because that's what it's going to take. Women and children. It infuriates me that people make this about the end game, instead of going to the root cause and taking care of it at the root. If you prevent an unplanned pregnancy, you prevent abortion. Come on, it can't be that stupid, Sue. Or maybe you can be.
All right, well, next
week
we have the debates coming up.
Yeah.
The debates are Thursday and Friday night, am I correct?
Correct.
All right, we will be at Kendall County on Thursday night and Grundy County on Friday night.
No. You have that wrong.
Bureau County.
We're going to, on Wednesday night, we're going to be at the Kendall County Democrats headquarters. We're going to be doing a Facebook Live video, and we're going to be interviewing people on who their choices are in the race, and then we'll compilate it all together. We'll do a little editing. We'll do some live stuff. And then on Thursday, we're going out to Bureau County to see Rick Wilkin and the gang.
Tweet.
And we'll be tweeting people's opinions and shooting some video there too. But look for us Wednesday. We'll have a regular show on Wednesday.
Yep. So tune in. Like us on Facebook. Like us on Twitter. Heartland Mamas. You can find us on Buzzsprout, Heartland Mamas, Google Heartland Mamas. Help us move along. Share if you like what we're doing. And thanks a lot for tuning in.
And hey, if you have any more recommendations for anybody else I can put on timeout,
send them, please. We'd love to know who to put on timeout.
That's who Resin video was sent to me.
You're like, it's a timeout.
Timeout. All right. This is Heidi Henry signing off.
And Marie Briel. Having a great night.
Take care now.
Bye-bye.